Hey everybody, Tall Family Films here. Today we're going to talk about AC compressors in your car. So here's an example of one. It probably looks really similar to the one that is in your car, especially if it's an Acura RDX, because that's what YouTube found when you were searching. Because this job is going to be done on an Acura RDX today, a 2007. So a lot of people are afraid to work on air conditioning systems because the system is closed and it's compressed. In some situations, it's no longer compressed because all the Freon leaked out. And if it leaked out, then you can go ahead and open the system up and work on it. If it has not leaked out yet, you should go to a mechanic and just tell them that you'll give them the Freon if they'll just suck it out of the car, right? So it's not cheap. I mean, it's not expensive, cheap stuff. Just tell them they can have it. A lot of them will do that for you. But we're going to talk about replacing the compressor today. This is one component in the system that can have a problem that makes it get hot inside the car. There are certainly other things that can go wrong that will also cause it to heat up inside the car. But the compressor not working, completely not working, actually can make the air coming out of the vents hotter than the air that's just ambient outside the vehicle. So today, let's dig into this. This first clip you're going to see is me seeing the problem for the first time. The clutch on this particular compressor was having an issue, so you'll get to see it exactly as I saw it for the first time.
But it's catching. It's like the clutch is slipping. We'll see how well that shows up.
So indeed, it was slipping. The video didn't show it very well, but you could certainly hear it making that tick-tick sound. So how we go about fixing this, you could replace just the clutch, but I actually did that on this car 2 years ago, so I figured there was no point in doing that again because it wasn't successful. It didn't last very long. So this time we're going to replace the entire compressor, and you'll get to see how we do that. So we're going to jack up the car to give ourselves some more room, so make sure you use a jack stand. Always practice good safety when you're doing this. Then there's a little skirt underneath the front of the car that you're going to see a good close-up on here. So what we're doing is taking out these little clips that hold in the skirt. They go all the way down the front of the car. There's two screws on the very ends that you need to take out as well, but once you have all of the pins, the clips and all of the screws out, then you should be able to pretty easily remove the skirt. There is one thing I want to call your attention to. Up here in the passenger wheel well, there are some different clips as well. I mean, they're the same type of clips, but they're in a different spot. So this is not duplicated on the driver's side. This is only a passenger side thing, but there are two, and you're going to see the other one here in just a second. So one thing you should also note is that this is a pretty obvious thing to do, because if you're missing one, when you start pulling on it, you'll know where it's caught, and you can go back and remove the ones you missed. So you can sort of do it by feel. But you do have to get this piece off. Removing the compressor through the bottom is far easier than removing it through the top. You'd have to take off the alternator, the power steering pump, and several other things that you really don't want to do. And it will come right out of the bottom, and it is the bottommost device on the serpentine belt. So, all right, so once you have the skirt off, I want to show you how to get the serpentine belt off. So right down here is the tensioner, the tensioner pulley. We need to put some slack on that pulley, so put a wrench down there. In my case, I took the hollow pipe that I used to jack up the car, and it allows me to put some pressure on that tensioner pulley, or remove some pressure, I guess, or remove some tension, and then I'm able to slide the belt off the top of the power steering pump, and pretty simple to get the belt off. There's lots of videos on exactly how to do this. Putting it back on this car is actually not that simple, because there's not room to get an actual serpentine belt removal tool in here. So I'm going to speed this up so that you don't have to endure me struggling with it in real life. Okay, see how easy that was? Haha. All right, so once the belt's off, there's lots of diagrams on the internet to show you how to put this back on, by the way, so it's just not easy to actually do. All right, so this is the compressor, the new compressor right here. I'm just going to show you there's 4 bolts that hold it on, and this compressor right here shows you the 4 holes that those bolts go in, okay? So we're going to be going after those right now. I'm going to start by doing the bolts that are on the bottom because I can actually see them. The bolts that are on the top have to be done by feel, and it's going to be a trick to get them, but it is very doable, so don't be discouraged. All right, so here we go after the 2 bottom bolts. Take a 3/8 extension or 3/8 ratchet with an extension. I'm using a power ratchet here. I highly suggest you do the same. It's going to make all of your car repair jobs a lot easier. All right, so after getting the 2 bottom bolts out, there are some other parts to the compressor that we need to discuss as well. There's 2 hoses. And there's a high pressure and a low pressure, and then there is actual electricity power wires that go to it as well that we'll need to do. So I used a variety of different sockets, or excuse me, different extensions and different ratchets. I used some wobble sockets. You can Google that. They're sold in lots of places. Different size extensions, and I even used some 1/4 inch ratchets as well as some 3/8 inch in getting this done. So you'll find the one that works best for you, but it is truly just sticking your hands up there, understanding it by feel. Having the new compressor out, the reason I showed that to you is because that will be very helpful to you to know exactly what you're feeling for based on other components that are present on the compressor. You'll know where the holes are, where these bolts actually are sitting. So all right, so once you loosen the top, I would not undo them completely because there are other pieces, like I said, that we need to take off as well. I did see another video that said to undo the transmission line. So either that is not necessary or it is necessary on other year RDXs, but it was not necessary on this 2007. There was no transmission line that really caused me any issue. All right, so I'm just going to move the camera to give you a closer view of the compressor so we can talk about these lines that we need to take off. All right, so here's one of them here that we'll use a socket with a small extension to go after. And it holds this line on that you're seeing. Then there is also the power that we talked about that powers the compressor, and it's pretty easy to see. It is right, going to come into view here in just a second. There it is right there. So it's just a clip. You need to be able to press the button to release the clip that holds the power wire. And then lastly, back over here, a little bit harder to see, but you can see the other line coming in right there. Okay, so and there is another bolt. You can feel it. And again, look at the new compressor to see exactly how it's held on, how the line's held on. So here we go, going after the wire. Power wire. Easiest part probably was to get that off. Again, looking at the new compressor helps you understand how it clips together. All right, so that part's done. So just tuck those wires out of the way. All right, so now we're going to go after that little nut that you could see pretty clearly. If we can see it clearly one more time. There it is. All right, so just put a socket on here with an extension. This is very easy. This one's very reachable. The easiest of the 2 by far. And when you remove this hose, remember all pressure needs to be off the system before you do this. That will explode right in your face if you have not removed pressure from the system. You don't want contaminants going back into the line. So I just took another brand new rubber glove and I took a 1/4 inch socket extension and just shoved it up inside here. And then I used a rubber band, just kind of wrapped it around the whole thing to make sure the glove stayed on there because it seemed to want to come back out. So just use something that's clean that you are certain is not going to come back out and let contaminants back into the line. Okay, this red arrow is pointing at the top of the bolt that we're trying to go after. Now we're on the top, coming down from the hood. And that bolt is a little bit difficult to get to, so I built kind of a Frankenstein of socket extensions, and then I used like a 90-degree socket piece at the bottom that allows the socket to literally turn 90 degrees and still be able to unscrew it. So fishing that down on there and then unscrewing it actually worked extremely well, as you were witnessing here. So the camera's going out of focus because every time I'm hitting the power ratchet button, it is vibrating the entire casing that the camera's sitting on. So apologize for that. Didn't realize that was going on. All right, so once you have that bolt off, you want to repeat the same process. You're going to pull that hose off and you want to cap it off with something that's clean, like the rubber glove. So I thought this camera angle might be a little bit more interesting. So we're looking down from the top, just like we were just a second ago when we were taking that air conditioning line off. And I'm under the car. Hello, you can see me down there. And I'm going to remove that was fun, wasn't it? It's always great when the socket falls off onto your face. So I am now removing the last bolt that's holding the compressor in. And again, this is a little tedious. In the end, it turned out that a 1/4 inch ratchet with an extension was the best one to go after this particular bolt. You might need to break it loose with a 3/8, but a 1/4 inch offers you the most flexibility. All right, so once you get the last bolt removed, the compressor will be very loose at this point. Shouldn't actually fall out because it requires a little bit of maneuvering for you to get it out, which you're going to see us do here in just a second as well. So, but first we have to finish getting the bolt out. Okay, so now we're back down under the car and the compressor is completely loose. And really, it's just a little game of Tetris here of twisting the compressor in the right direction. I happened to get it right on the first shot. I did not get it back in perfectly on the first shot, and that took me 2 times of turning it. But anyways, we just need to grab the compressor, provide it some support. It will try to fall out. Once you get it actually in the right position, it will actually just fall out. So make sure that you've got it supported. Not that the old compressor is going to be needed for anything, maybe a core charge or something, but it's nice not to destroy it so that they can use it again. All right, so here is the old compressor versus the new compressor. So this is a pretty valuable step whenever you're replacing something. Make sure that everything looks the same because you don't want to get it in there and not understand why something isn't fitting. This pink tag, it tells you right on the tag, but it's telling me that there is oil in the compressor. So it's called PAG oil. It's a special air conditioning type of oil. There's different color labels that mean different color things. Pink means that there's oil in there. All right, so the power connector looks to be the same. It is actually slightly different. The physical connector looks a little bit different, but it looks to me like the insides are exactly the same, and even though I have an extra hood on the other one, it doesn't look to me like anything is not going to fit together. So, and also I would know that right away. Once I get the compressor in, I wouldn't have to bolt it in to know if that's going to fit or not. Okay, but the compressors look the same, so now we go about actually doing the install. So word on the bolt sizes here, at least on this car, they're not the same, okay? So there are longer bolts. This should be a pretty obvious thing for you to figure out, because if I put the wrong bolts, the short bolts in the long holes, they won't come all the way through. So there's physically, you can see my demonstration of it here. See, it doesn't come through. So I have to use a longer bolt there. Now, if you were doing the opposite, the longer bolt would go through the short hole, but it wouldn't tighten all the way, and I would certainly hope that you would stop tightening because it's going to meet a lot of resistance if you did get it in there wrong. But just notice that the bolts are different sizes, so don't get them confused when you're putting this thing back together. Okay, so now we need to take the protective plates off that came on the new compressor. Notice how hard I have to push to get this off. So imagine if you left this on and tried to get it off while it's on the car and you can't see it because it's up on top. So the compressor comes sort of vacuum packed. So you want to break that seal. You can pull that plate up. Just put the bolt back on really loosely so that when you go to actually remove it, to put the hose on, that it's not going to be difficult for you to get off. All right, so this one I don't have to take all the way off because I have very good access to this one. This is the one that you could see easily on an earlier part of the film. All right, so that one I just loosened, and now we're ready to put it back into the car. So like many auto repair jobs, this one went later into the night, so it's dark at this point. I'm sorry for that. I really don't like it when it goes that long. But anyways, putting the compressor back in, we just need to get it to the point that we can get some bolts started so it will hold its place. Okay, so you remember the piece of rubber glove that we put on the end of the AC line. We're going to remove that now, and then there's a gasket we're going to have to replace. I'll try to get you a little better camera angle to see what we're doing here. But remember, I put a rubber band around this glove, so we just kind of rip all of that off. And before I can put this back in, though, there is a gasket that needs to be removed. So you can't see it here, but you'll see it in a better camera angle in just here in 1 second. Those hoses have a good amount of flex in them as well because they're tied to rubber hoses. So, all right, so just pull this gasket off. My compressor came with new gaskets. I haven't seen a brand new compressor or a remanufactured one that didn't, but this is a very common part. You should be able to pick it up at any local auto parts store. And they are different sizes because the hoses are actually different sizes. And just get the right size for the one that you're working on. You can compare it to the old one to know that you've got the right size. It's kind of like a small rubber band. It's not quite as flexible as a rubber band, but you put it on to the end of the line here, and that creates a better seal. So don't skip this step. You want to make sure that you don't want to do all this work and then have a leak. And these things are so cheap. So don't make that mistake. Don't save 2 cents and cost yourself like $30 in Freon. And there's no way that you can undo the problem either without pulling the line back off. So then you'll lose all the Freon. Okay, so here's that plate. This is the one I said we didn't need to remove all the way because we had good access to it. So as you can see, we do have good access. And I'm going to pull that plate off right here and open the pathway for us to put the AC line on. It's a little harder for me to get off than I imagined, but all right. We just put the nut back on, tighten it up, and that creates a great seal. And we'll know for a fact that we have a good seal before we're done with all of this. You'll see how that works here soon. So I apologize for not getting this part filmed very well, but what's happening here is I am putting the top AC line back on as well. So you can reach up in from the bottom, you can feel the plate that's there, remove it, and attach the rest of the top AC line to the compressor. Okay, so now we're going to need a manifold set. This is available pretty cheap on Amazon. I will put a link in the description to where you can buy this one. There are better ones than the ones I'm using, and I'll put a link into that actual one that you should buy. So these hoses will not go on the wrong fittings. Like I talked about earlier, the hoses are different sizes. So if you try to put it on the wrong one, it just won't fit. Won't snap on. These things are spring loaded on the ends, so they just snap on, and some of them have handles down there that you turn to turn them on and off, but these don't. All right, so then when the manifold is attached, I mean, we got both lines attached, you're going to need a vacuum pump. Don't worry, you don't have to buy this thing. You can rent it from your local auto parts store. So at least Advance and AutoZone rent them. O'Reilly's may, I don't know, I've never rented from them. But anyways, you're just going to rent this pump from them. And when I say rent, it's more like a loan. It's free. You buy it, then when you bring it back, they give you your money back. But they don't do it on every single tool. They do have to have a loaner tool in stock. In my case, the pump happened to be brand new, which had never happened before. All right, so I had to move the manifold set here just simply because the yellow hose wasn't long enough to reach the pump. Make sure that all the lines are attached, and then make sure that both of the red and the blue handles are closed, and it has a directional arrow on each one telling you if it's closed. Turn the pump on. So now we're starting to create a vacuum, but the vacuum right now stops right here at the manifold. So, and you can see where these needles are sitting at 0, but I'm going to get you a much better camera angle.
Here we go.
And now I'm going to open up both the red and the blue, kind of at the same time. You'll see the needle start to move, and you can hear the pump sound change as well. You can see it going down. And it'll drop down to about 28, 29. You may get to 30 on yours, but you just, the key is we want it to drop and hold. And it's true what they say, you don't notice that there's a train near your house when you live there, but you guys probably noticed right now. All right, so the pump's been running now for, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes. So I'm gonna turn these off. So now I'm sealing it off the system. The system is no longer being vacuumed by the pump. Having a little problem with this right side, doesn't want to tighten down so well. Okay, now I'm going to turn the pump off. And let's watch that. We're checking to see if there's any leaks. So we're just going to let it sit here, make sure that these needles don't move. All right, it's been about 30 minutes, and you can see we're still holding here, looking pretty good. So we're gonna turn the pump back on. And we're gonna let it pull a vacuum for about 45 minutes. We just want it to pull all of the moisture out of the system. All right, so we're still looking really good here, okay? Still holding fine. So I'm gonna close these off. Nice and tight. So all we need to do now is turn the pump off, and we can move on to add a refrigerant. On the hood of your car, if you look around, you'll find a sticker similar to this one. It tells you what type of refrigerant goes in your car. It also tells you how much you should put in. So you see recommended charge on this line, and it has 17.7 or 17.2 ounces. 17.2 ounces. Let's get that right. All right, so this can is only 12 ounces. So I know this entire can go in. So attach it to the yellow line that used to be attached to the pump. And there's a lot of adapters, these little copper adapters that go on top of the can. There's several different kinds, but any modern can of refrigerant that you go into the store to buy today, you do not want to use an old style adapter, and you can tell the difference because the old style adapters have a very sharp point that screws down into the can when you're turning this handle right here. The new ones have a blunt point. There is an adapter that converts the old to the new, but they're only like $6. So now Freon's flowing through the hose. There's air in here too because we just pulled the vacuum. So right now I'm running refrigerant through the yellow line. And so the yellow line is full of refrigerant, but it is also full of air that got in there when I took it off of the pump and put it onto the can. So I need to get that air out of the line. So I'm going to just loosen this yellow line. The manifold kit that I'm going to show you will be better. letting some of the
So
Freon
we look
come
like
through.
Back to the Future here for
Get the
just a
air
minute
out.
and letting the Freon escape, tighten it back down.
So now
You
the
don't want
hose
to
is
over
filled with
tighten
Freon.
these lines, by the way. There is a gasket inside there.
So you
that
just
does
start
the
the
job.
car
If you over tighten it, then you'll
and open up
defeat
the
the
low
gasket
side.
and the Freon will escape again. Okay, so now you go over and start the car. You have to start the car or we can't get any Freon to go in because the compressor has to turn on. So we open up the blue line and now Freon starts to go in. All right, so there's different schools of thought on this. Some people say just let the can sit there and empty out. I like the method where you turn the can from the 12 o'clock to 3 o'clock position, which I will show you here in just a second. You can see that the clutch is turning down there on the new compressor, which is awesome. It means our compressor is good, or at least everything appears to be good at this point, as good as we can possibly know it is. And Freon is starting to go in. There is PAG oil, additional oil inside these cans. And so that additional oil feeds the compressor. I'm losing Freon right there because the line came loose right at the can. So that does not let any air in because it's still pressurized right there. All right, so I just moved the can like we talked about between 12 and 3, just over and over again until the can is empty. If you'll recall, the car wants 17.2 ounces. And so I've already put about 12 in. There was a tiny bit left in the can, but we'll call it 12. So I need about an additional 5 ounces. So I need to put the AC line or the yellow line back onto this can along with the adapter and then figure out how much the whole thing weighs, and then we'll calculate out 5 ounces as it exits the can. We'll be able to see it in real time on the scale. If you don't have a scale, then at this point you should make sure the charge holds, and then you should go buy a can of refrigerant that has a gauge built into it, and then you'll know that you're getting the right amount in there. Okay, so we're going to go ahead, same procedure here. Remember, it's capped off at the manifold right now. Both lines are closed off at the manifold. So now we have to repeat the process where I need to let the air out of the line because I had to put a new can onto the line. So we're going to repeat the same process over again. So let's grab the pliers here. Now it really is Back to the Future. We're repeating ourselves now. All right, so we're going to let a little bit of refrigerant out. But one important factor, I didn't turn the refrigerant on yet. So let's turn that on. Okay. Got some refrigerant coming out. So now I know there's nothing but refrigerant in that line. And we tighten that back down. We loosen both, we loosen the blue side, not both sides this time. And now we're just going to wait for the can to, empty itself 5 ounces out. So it was about 18 ounces when we started. And again, we just pick the can up, do 12-3 every couple of seconds. Probably every 30 seconds is fine. Just want to make sure that we're getting a good mix and the PAG oil and everything are coming out of the can while we do this. And so in real time, you get to watch the weight of the can decrease over and over until it gets down to about 13.5. Okay, so I'm happy with that. I'm going to go ahead and cap it off at this point, and we're just going to assume that the proper amount is in there because we did some pretty good measurements to make sure of that. All right, so now we just what's left is just cleaning things up. So cleaning up all the tools and removing the manifold set from the car. There's usually some caps that go over both the high pressure and the low pressure service ports that we attach the manifold to. Oh yeah, very important, make sure that you close off the manifold before you go removing the lines so that we don't lose any vacuum or introduce anything else into the system. and attach the caps that you may have taken off. They should be present for you to do so. If you don't have any, you can buy those as well at any auto parts store. And I suggest you have them, because if there's ever a leak in the Schrader valve, the caps can actually save you from losing all of your Freon, and until you can get it fixed. So, hey, listen, if this video helped you, you can really help me by subscribing to my channel. I watch a ton of videos on YouTube. For a long time, I was just like you. I never clicked subscribe, but when I went to produce my own, I realized the difference that it makes when people actually do subscribe to the channel. So if you'd please do that, leave me any comments below. I do respond to everything as quickly as I can, and I'll help you with any questions that you have about the process. Thanks a lot.